Hello, I'm Michelle Powers, and you are watching a special edition of Currents News. We're taking an exclusive look into the Diocese of Brooklyn's Catholic schools. They're being scrubbed and sanitized, what academies had to invest in, and the price tag on safety. Plus, new top tech by a Catholic creator, a device that can be used anywhere to stop the spread. The Democrats have wrapped up their convention, and now it's the Republicans' turn. Lots of questions on what it means to vote pro-life, we ask in Archbishop. Then get your luggage because we all need an escape from politics. Time to roam around the Eternal City. This time, our first steps on the Spanish Steps. That's next on Currents News. It's a three-step process: cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting, with just one goal: keeping schools safe. Currents News' Emily Druby has an exclusive look into the purifying procedures underway in the Diocese of Brooklyn.
From doorknobs to desks, this professional cleaning team has an important goal:
to clean and sanitize every single part of the building, from the cafeteria to the students' classrooms to the main offices to the maintenance.
Performing a deep clean at Salve Regina Catholic Academy in East New York, Brooklyn, scrubbing by hand and using this fogger to hit the unreachable spots. This sanitizing is happening at all schools across the Diocese of Brooklyn. The cost is high, over $130,000. The bills are being paid by the superintendent's office. The work ensures clean schools will be ready to welcome kids back to class. Each school is tailoring operations to their unique needs. At Salve Regina, that includes buying over $1,000 of equipment, including a backpack fogger.
Every evening, we will be able to reinforce the work that was done by this professional cleaning company. My utmost concern is the safety of the students, is the safety of our staff and the teachers.
Like Salve Regina, most schools are opening for in-class teaching. That's one of three plans that get underway in September. Plan A, 100% in-person instruction. Plan B, a hybrid of in-person and at-home learning. And Plan C, 100% distance learning.
Isolation room is the last door on this side.
Our Lady of Trust Catholic Academy in Canarsie is preparing for full-time classroom teaching.
We have a custodian on staff during the day. He will clean the bathrooms, wipe them down 3 times a day. 3 times a day they'll wipe down the hand railings.
Principal Mariel Wilkinson says parents will soon get a tour of the school's safety measures over Zoom. She also points out teachers will be wearing clear masks so kids can see their faces.
Especially for like phonics and things like that, you know, they can see. And they can also see that they're smiling underneath. They're not saying, look, I'm smiling under this mask. They can actually see that.
St. Joseph the Worker Catholic Academy's deep cleaning has the added challenge of reaching high ceilings. The Windsor Terrace School is also taking steps to meet the needs of their youngest students.
In pre-K, kindergarten, they use a lot of Play-Doh. Play-Doh is really important for fine motor skills. It's really important for dexterity. We can't sanitize Play-Doh. And so alternatively, we bought lots of Play-Doh and everyone will get their own Play-Doh in Ziploc bags.
The student population at the academy is growing this year, and with the need to use more classrooms so all kids keep a safe distance, 7 new faculty are coming on board. Schools will be back in session with these new innovative methods in place starting September 9th. All are ready to switch to plans B or C if COVID cases arise. In Windsor Terrace, Brooklyn, Emily Druby, Currents News.
Parents can learn the latest academy reopening plans by visiting their child's school website. All individual details are posted there. And it seems the September school bell will ring just as the city sees the lowest percentage of positive tests since the start of the pandemic. At the peak in late March, more than 71% of New Yorkers were testing positive for the virus. However, a warning at this moment as well. The city's test and trace team is tracking a small outbreak in Borough Park. The central Brooklyn neighborhood has seen 16 new cases in the past week. Keeping students, teachers, and staff safe from the coronavirus is the top priority, no matter how schools reopen. Thankfully, detection inventions are now available to help do that. Currents News' Jessica Easthope introduces us to a Catholic creator with top tech ready to be installed.
Once the bell rings on September 9th, most of the Catholic schools in the Brooklyn Diocese will once again be flooded with students. Everyone's face has to be covered and temperatures must be taken, and now there's new technology designed to make sure those guidelines are followed and kids get into school quickly and safely.
They need a device to be put in front just because a parent is sending their child to a school. This just happens to be a standalone device with robust software with management tools behind it that could grow within your network. Because I have no mask on, it says no entry, no mask.
Frank Marinello is the CEO of Hunter Telecom, the technology company that sells this.
Normal temperature.
The COVID kiosk.
Within 1 second, it'll tell you whether you answered your COVID questions, if that's part of the entrance policy. It'll give you a temperature and then also your mask detection.
Some schools are using handheld thermometers and even thermal cameras, but the COVID kiosk, which sells for less than $3,000, sets itself apart.
This is more focused, individual, one kid at a time, self-containing, and non-intrusive.
The COVID kiosk will let you know a person's temperature and if they're wearing a mask or not. It can even stop them from coming into a building without one.
Please wear a mask.
You could open and close doors with it. You could open and close a turnstile with it. It actually works as a security device.
According to the Brooklyn Diocese reopening plan, everyone in school is required to wear a face covering, and schools must conduct daily health screenings and temperature checks. Several schools in the Brooklyn Diocese are already looking to use the COVID kiosk for the start of the school year.
The budgets are completely different than what the DOE budget is, so we're really trying to sit down and make sure it's price affordable. We're trying to make sure the safety of the employees and the children are far exceeding what the price of the machine is.
Hunter Telecom says the device was created out of a need, but will outlive the pandemic.
Even in schools, you can have it where it checks your attendance. We wanted to continue to develop the software so they get full use out of it.
Hunter Telecom is trying to get the COVID kiosk into as many schools as possible before the first day back. In Bay Ridge, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
The school year will begin in the Diocese of Brooklyn without one of the men who made it all possible. Brother Ralph, an important leader who devoted much of his life to improving and preserving Catholic education, has passed away. Currents News' Emily Druby has the story of his great legacy.
A final goodbye to Brother Ralph Darmento, an indispensable educator in the Brooklyn Diocese. He passed away on Friday at the age of 68.
It's a big loss for the Diocese of Brooklyn.
As the Deputy Superintendent of Schools, Brother Ralph worked closely with Bishop James Massa when he was the Vicar for Catholic Education in the Diocese of Brooklyn.
He was of tremendous help in assisting our academies to balance their books and to try to maintain a steady enrollment or to increase the number of students in the school.
Brother Ralph spent 7 years helping to shape education in the diocese. Before that, he spent over 15 years working in the Archdiocese of Newark's education office. He was also a lifelong teacher, working at schools across the country. And while he transitioned into a more administrative role, teaching was a gift that never left him.
Ralph would sometimes walk into a 7th grade, a 6th grade classroom. Then he would do math drills with them. It was just always amazing. You knew that was his element. That's where he felt most comfortable.
Superintendent of Schools Thomas Chadzuko says education was Brother Ralph's passion, often searching all over the world for ways to make Catholic schools the best.
He was someone who was always researching, always looking for best practices, always looking for solutions. And a lot of the things that we've adopted in our academy governance model really became because of him.
He was also the liaison for the Brooklyn Diocese to Catholic high schools, and he helped to shape the Catholic identity of diocesan parish schools and academies. Hallelujah. Bishop Raymond Geppetto was the main celebrant at Brother Ralph's Mass of Christian Burial on Tuesday at Immaculate Heart of Mary Church in Windsor Terrace.
He really was a great educator, and we were blessed to have him here working with us.
His impact on diocesan education will live on. In Windsor Terrace, Emily Druby, Currents News.
When we get back, heated debate, one of the biggest among Catholics. What's it mean to vote pro-life? We ask a top Archbishop. See what you think. Election Day is less than 11 weeks away, and a big choice has to be made. As Catholics, there are many issues to weigh before you cast your ballot. Joining us now to talk more about it is Archbishop Joseph Naumann, chairman of the USCCB's Pro-Life Committee. Current News' Christine Persichetti asked him a huge question stirring up debate among Catholics right now. Abortion. What's it mean to vote pro-life?
The bishops in our cover statement to our larger statement on faithful citizenship identified the abortion issue remaining a preeminent priority, and for three reasons. First, because it attacks life when it's most vulnerable, most innocent. Second, because it happens within the family and it destroys the bonds, the most sacred human bonds of a parent and child. And third, because of the sheer numbers, over 65 million lives lost since 1973. And each one of those children have a mother and a father that have been scarred by the abortion experience. So it's preeminent. When I was talking with Pope Francis, I told him there were some that criticized us for that, but he said, why? He said, it is preeminent because if we don't have life, no other right matters.
As you mentioned, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops approved a document late last year called Forming Consciences for Faithful Citizenship. It provides guidance to voters during a presidential election year, but doesn't tell Catholics how to vote. Tell us a little bit about it and explain what it means to vote with a Catholic conscience.
Yeah, so I would say, first of all, the church from the very beginning of our country has decided that in a democratic republic, it's not the proper role of the church to tell Catholics who to vote for, either for particular candidates or parties. Having said that, it is our responsibility to inform Catholics in what are the principles and the priorities when they go into the voting booth. And so that's what faithful citizenship, it attempts to form Catholics' consciences, and it brings up a whole array of issues. I mean, there's a moral dimension to so many issues in our culture and society. So we have a concern about all of those, but then we have to look at what the priorities are as well.
All right, so what advice do you have for Catholics when preparing for this upcoming election? How do we prepare ourselves in our minds to cast a ballot that we can be proud of?
Pray, first of all. Pray for the Holy Spirit to enlighten you in your choices. And then secondly, I would say, don't allow party loyalty to govern the way that you vote. That should not supersede your Catholic faith. And so I think we vote our conscience first and parties second. It's important to be part of parties, and every party has its strengths and weaknesses. And I encourage people to be active in their political parties to try and change them in positive ways, but don't vote party over moral issues.
That was Archbishop Joseph Naumann, chairman of the USCCB's Pro-Life Committee. Speaking of pro-life, more than 100 Democrats are calling for their party to change its platform when it comes to abortion. The politicians are concerned that the party's leaders have moved to an extreme position on abortion in the last 2 decades, which makes the millions of pro-life Democrats feel like they don't belong in the party. Senator Kamala Harris is a staunch supporter of legal protection for abortion and has pushed Biden on that issue. The Republican National Convention starts next week, and we're still learning about some of the people who will be kicking off the event. Among them, Covington Catholic high school student Nick Sandman. He captured headlines after being falsely accused of confronting and harassing a Native American activist on the Washington Mall. The student was in the Capitol for the 2019 March for Life. A GOP official is saying Sandman is being invited to speak to demonstrate the dangers of so-called cancel culture. Also to appear at the RNC, New York's Cardinal Timothy Dolan. His Eminence will deliver the convention's opening prayer next Monday. The Cardinal is saying he accepted the invitation because it's his sacred obligation to pray whenever requested to do so. And he would have done the same for the Democrats if they had asked. Perhaps the biggest topic this election season, the coronavirus crisis. Though the federal government plays a huge role in the pandemic efforts, most of the help comes from the local level. This weekend, we are highlighting the efforts of Catholic Charities, Brooklyn and Queens. They have been on the front lines all pandemic long, making sure people have the resources they need. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has the story from Howard Beach.
On the front lines of the pandemic, along with first responders, is Catholic Charities, the agency feeding the communities most in need. Across the country, Catholic Charities has given out more than $400 million worth of assistance. The impact of that help has been priceless.
It shows that we're not out of this.
Debbie Hampson, Senior Director of Community Health and Wellness for Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens, says the pandemic is putting her team to the test.
I actually was on our 9/11 disaster team, and I've also been on our Sandy disaster relief team. So I've seen disasters, but I think in a way this is the worst one.
From April until the end of June, Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens held 11 pop-up food pantries across the Brooklyn Diocese. The agency gave out more than 400,000 meals and served more than 45,000 people.
My staff and our volunteers were willing to go out and be that front line, giving out that food. They're putting their health at risk, but we saw the need was so great.
During the height of the pandemic, the agency's team grew from just a handful of people to nearly 150 volunteers. Help, they say, they couldn't do without.
We've had the Knights of Columbus, we've had the Ladies of Charity, just people who want to help out in their community.
Richard Slizeski, the Senior Vice President for Mission with Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens, says donations are keeping the agency going. In addition to the pop-up food pantries, Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens is seeing a 1,000% increase at the 20 food pantries it runs year-long. Richard says when they were feeding people who thought they would never be at a food pantry, the agency's true mission came into play.
We recognize the dignity of every single person. Part of that dignity is to be able to live and feed your families, and we're walking with people on that journey.
Pandemic or not, for Catholic Charities Brooklyn and Queens, the work is never done. In Howard Beach, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
And don't move yet. Have you noticed that New York streets seem dirtier? Meet a team of volunteers determined to clean it up, even if the mayor's office can't do it. Plus the Spanish Steps. Ever walk them? We are going right after this break. There's a lot of garbage on New York City streets, and many aren't happy about it. They want it cleaned up, but because of the coronavirus crisis, city workers have been laid off. Currents News' Emily Drewby has this story from Brooklyn's Prospect Park, where volunteers are taking trash into their own hands.
Trash under trees in the picnic area covering Prospect Park in Brooklyn, a similar sight at many New York City public spaces.
So if usage is through the roof, of course that means more trash.
People using the parks isn't the only factor behind the garbage, it's also a lack of money. City Hall slashed 14% of the Parks Department's budget. Also, as Sue Donahue, president of the Prospect Park Alliance, explains, the pandemic has hurt other revenue streams too.
About 25% of our budget was lost because we rely on events and concession revenue in addition to individual donations. So all of that stopped with COVID.
Right now, about 75 people are on the job caring for the park. Normally, that number is closer to 120. To bridge the gap, the Alliance is asking the community for help. Volunteers who clean, they're park champions. This week, the teams included New York City Council member Brad Lander.
It's painful. You don't like to see this beautiful place made ugly and disrespected. But the thing we can do about it is roll up our sleeves together and go pick up the trash. It's a beautiful thing.
Caring for the environment is a major issue for Pope Francis and for Brother Joseph Baca, the Franciscan Brothers of Brooklyn. He's impressed by what the Prospect Park volunteers are doing. It's a step everyone can take.
We do see a lot of trash lately, especially since the pandemic. We'll see masks or gloves or whatever out there, and I think part of being a good steward is, hey, let's try to pick some of this up.
In the park, volunteers Tamara and her daughter are enthused so many are cleaning up.
It just validates my point that New York is going to get better, and I think it gives me hope for humanity.
Now, if you yourself are interested in putting on some gloves, picking up a trash grabber, and becoming a park champion yourself, the Alliance is looking for volunteers for every Monday through the end of August. In Prospect Park, Emily Drewby, Currents News.
To sign up and help clean up Prospect Park, go to prospectpark.org/get-involved/volunteer. Now it's time to leave the Big Apple behind us, if only for a few minutes. Melissa Butts, our Vatican correspondent, has the itinerary. Since European vacations have been canceled for the time being, we're letting her roam around the Eternal City. For the next couple of weeks, Melissa won't show us everything we are missing, but everything we have to look forward to the next time we get to escape to Italy. Today we're walking up the Spanish Steps.
Welcome to Piazza di Spagna, named in honor of the Spanish embassy to the Holy See. This tourist hotspot is known for its characteristic Spanish steps, but it also holds a deeply religious meaning. Every year on December 8th, the Pope goes to Piazza di Spagna to pay homage to Our Lady on the Feast of the Immaculate Conception. He places a bouquet of flowers at the base of the statue, while the head of the fire department places a wreath of flowers on her arm, since they have the tallest ladder in the city. Roman expert Kieran Ratnam explains this tradition began in 1857 when Pope Pius IX had the column installed in the square. It was to remind tourists of their faith after many stopped visiting the basilicas and turned their attention to more secular aspects of the Eternal City.
So here you had a reminder of what was really important in life. And here was a woman who had not sinned at all. Behind there's the building of the Propaganda Fide, and that was deliberately also built there because that building was to train priests to become missionaries in different parts of the world.
But the square's main attraction is still the famed 135 Spanish steps. They were built by an Italian architect and paid for largely by the French and the Vatican. The stairs link Piazza di Spagna to the French church at the top, consecrated by Pope Sixtus V in 1585.
The idea of building the Spanish steps connect the Trinità dei Monti, the church, to the piazza at the bottom, came up from a Cardinal Mazarin who worked under two great French kings, and one of them was Louis XIV, who was the Sun King. But it was only come to fruition 100 years later.
It was Clement XI who eventually carried out the project at the beginning of the 1700s, around 100 years after the fountain of the Ugly Boat was placed in the square by yet another pope.
Well, on the fountain, you can definitely see the bees, which represent the Barberini family, who Urban VIII comes from, and he's the one who commissioned the fountain.
Rumor has it Pope Urban VIII designed the boat submerged in water in memory of the flood in the Tiber River in 1598. The truth is, the water pressure connecting the aqueduct to the fountain is simply not strong enough for it to be built any higher. All of Rome's piazzas were commissioned in part by various popes. In fact, Piazza di Spagna includes requests and actions by at least 6 popes, making it the square we know and love today. In Rome, Melissa Butts, Currents News.
And that is Currents News. I'm Michelle Powers, but be sure to join Christine Persichetti every weeknight at 7. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Have a great weekend.